Hey pups, RP here, and today I'm back at it again with another list of things I do because I'm bored, and today's list is a top 20 list of villains from Nintendo. A few rules before we start. I won't count any villains from Pokemon because I'm saving that list for another day. The villains have to be from any Nintendo game, not just any game made for Nintendo's gaming systems. Rareware and other gaming companies collabing with Nintendo is probably the only exception, since Nintendo has full ownership of any and all Rareware games, for example. As for Sega, yeah, I'm not gonna see any Sega or Sonic bad guys here. The villains can be from any Nintendo game, from Mario to Donkey Kong to Metroid to any Nintendo-owned franchise. I will be counting bosses and no game per franchise rule, and keep in mind this is my own list of Nintendo villains. If you have a villain you wanted to see on this list, or have a favorite Nintendo villain yourself, be sure to let us know in the comments. And with all that being said, let's get started! Bowser. After the arcade success of Donkey Kong vs. Mario in the 80s, Mario had a new enemy to face. Since Donkey's retirement from enemy to ally, Bowser, the weird hybrid of a turtle and a dragon, the Great Koopa King, always trying to one-up everyone's favorite heroic plumber, and constantly kidnapping Princess Peach, just to rule her kingdom. But that never stopped Mario and Luigi from what we've seen so far. Bowser may be one of the baddest of the bad, but I don't think he's up to par with some of the other bad guys on this list. Don't get me wrong, he's a great Nintendo villain, but I just like some Nintendo baddies more than others. King Dedede. While I've only watched the Kirby show, mostly a handful of episodes, and never really played the games, and played a bunch of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, King Dedede is kind of a special one. He's a cross between comedic relief and a villain with some character development. He's a debatable ruler of the Dream World, and the leader of the Waddle Dees. He's kind of an anti-hero, in a way. Sometimes a bad guy, and sometimes an extremist with good intentions on helping Kirby when things get to be too much for our pink little hero. Also, for some reason his voice actor from Kirby Right Back At Ya makes me think of Oogie Boogie for The Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't know why, but I like it. Gruntilda. Surprised a villain like her is seen in a game like Banjo-Kazooie, but also not at the same time. Gruntilda kidnaps Banjo's sister Tooty in order to become young and beautiful again, which is giving me Jessica Rabbit vibes once she wins. Yeah. And that's not all. Other than being a literal witch, she's also cruel and just as evil as the others on this list, mostly with the possible mistreatment of Robot Shark Clanker, and constantly wanting revenge after she survived thanks to her sisters in Banjo-Tooie, wanting to kill Banjo and Kazooie. Gruntilda's a real, true blue evil witch at heart. Wario. 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 He makes me think of that one guy from that show, Wacky Races, and even had his own spin-off show. He's kind of like the shadow to Mario's Sonic, but with a twist. He reminds me more of Eddie from Ed, Edd n Eddy for a lot of reasons. Greedy, easily jealous, reckless, dumb, and a bit crude to boot. He also has a brother, which is another shadow to a Sonic of Mario's brother Luigi, Waluigi, and has a group of misfit friends, as seen in WarioWare, so he's not some random hermit. Plus, he's a lot more entertaining and funny than his heroic counterpart. He's basically the Eddie of the Nintendo world. Tom Nook. Kinda weird to put him on this list, but hear me out. Tom is just about as greedy as Wario is, but definitely more greedy and a bit smarter than Wario. He's pretty much a capitalist who only wants money.
Hello, I like money.
Kinda like any IRL greedy mean Mr. Boss Man in the world. That's all I really gotta say on Tom. He's just a selfish person whose only concern is money when you purchase upgrades for your house or buying other items from his nookling stores. Wolf O'Donnell. My furry fangirl is showing with this one. While Wolf may or may not be intentionally evil, he's willing to do anything for a paycheck. Head general of the rival army to Fox and the Star Fox Army, Wolfstar. Wolf is pretty much a fan favorite for furries, Nintendo fans, and massive Star Fox fans in general. Plus, he's a playable character in the Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Wii, and I think the Wii U and onward, but I could be wrong, correct me if I am. This Wolf is big, bad, and dangerous, and he's making sure you know and remember that. But despite having some darkness in his heart, he is willing to put his life on the line for the greater good when needed. Like with Mario and Wario, he is the shadow to Fox's Sonic. Plus, he's got an amazing character design. Porky Minch. I've already talked about Gygus to death on this channel before in previous videos, but not much is said about Porky. He did appear in Earthbound, aka Mother 2, as a brainwashed corrupt slave for Gygus, but it isn't until Mother 3 where he begins to shine. He pretty much becomes tyrant ruler to New Pork City in the game, and the reason being was because he had a rough childhood, and the world was cruel to him. Guy's clearly never heard of a therapist before. But while I do feel some kind of sympathy for him, I can't help but enjoy beating his tyrant ass and singing Sweet Victory as I win. Master Hand. Smash Bros. Is a super fun and entertaining game, but something that always confused me since I played Super Smash Bros. Brawl was Master Hand and his counterpart Crazy Hand. What are you, man? The guy's like a puppet master of all the characters in the game, and is a common boss for any character to face. He wants to control and use the players and characters as his own puppets, as if to toy both the player and the characters the player plays as. Honestly, Master Hand has and always will confuse me. Meta Knight. Okay, hear me out. Meta Knight is kind of like Vegeta to Kirby's Goku. Reason why he could be dubbed as a villain is because in Meta Knight's Revenge, he was willing to kill Kirby in order for the Dream World to stop being lazy. Yeah, and reminder, Vegeta was once a villain and is now turned a good guy. Meta Knight is similar to that, and despite that, he is seen to aid Kirby when he's needed, and sometimes trains and tests Kirby in the games, at least from what I've seen of the franchise so far. Plus, he's got an amazingly badass design. Also, for some reason, he reminds me of the Dark Crow from the cartoon adventures of Larry Boy. Don't ask. Bowser Jr., son of Bowser and heir to the Koopa King. While he seemed to be just as evil and to be a spoiled brat, he's just a boy who wants to make his father proud and is willing to do similar evil deeds like his father, kidnapping Peach, battling Mario, and trying to take over the Mushroom Kingdom. Like father, like son. Despite that, he's just a kid wanting to make his father proud. Andross. I have talked about Andross before in a previous video, same can and will be said for many others on this list. This guy's like the Mojo Jojo of Star Fox, and Powerpuff Girls was released long after Star Fox was made. He starts out as a polygon face in the first games, and then turns into a weird floating monkey head with hands, and his true form is either a brain or a robot monkey thing. Yeah, I'm just as confused as you guys are. But before he became what he is in the games, he used to be a scientist, but not a very good one. He was exiled to planet Venom and became what he is now. He's kind of like Mewtwo if Mewtwo was a scientist instead of an experiment, and the scientist turned into an experiment. Yeah, probably the weirdest analogy I've ever come up with. Majora. I talked about Majora's Mask to death at this point. It's one of my favorite Zelda games in the franchise. Majora starts out as a cursed mask, and is taken and worn by the Skull Kid, and later controls his mind to steal Link's Ocarina and Epona, force the moon to destroy Termina, and finally becomes a final boss Link has to face off in the game. This is what makes Majora's Mask so interesting and intriguing, even having a creepypasta made about the game, mostly involving that creepy Link statue, but you get the picture. King K. Rool, one of the biggest and most well-known enemies in the Donkey Kong franchise. He's a king, a pirate, a scientist, and is one of the greatest enemies in the DK family. Whether he's trying to steal golden bananas, the crystal coconut, or stealing the Kong's treehouse, K. Rool is one croc king you don't want to cross or mess with. His name is a literal play on words of cruel. It's in his name, for God's sake. Some wonder why he steals food and other things from the Kongs. He hates bananas, and only wants to end the race of the Kongs as a whole. He's even cruel to his own henchmen. Reminds me of a certain character, but we'll get to that later. Girahim. This guy, for some reason, makes me think of Zamasu if you took an even creepier route to life and became an anime creepypasta character. The dude's literally called a demon lord and is just overall creepy and weird from his first appearance in Skyward Sword. His music even indicates he's creepy, and you should watch your back with this guy. And since he takes over a role as a demon lord, super surreal and high, all of his emotions and actions are just as negative as Xant's and Ganon's. Guy has little, if no redeeming qualities to his name, and personality as a whole. Zant. Speaking of the Dark Twilight King himself, Zant is one of those villains who started out as calm, cool, and collected at first, and later turns out to be a literal raging psycho when you encounter your first boss fight with him. He also has a weird obsession with Ganon and Twilight Princess, seeing him as a literal god, and I already explained this in my Twilight Princess review, so all I can say is Zant kind of reminds me of a calm anime character when they snap and go batshit crazy. Mother Brain. The Metroid series is known to be one of the darkest franchises known to Nintendo, next to Zelda, with a weird and strange array of monsters and villains. Mother Brain is no exception to this rule. She's like if Barney the dinosaur fell into a barrel of acid and got experimented on to hopefully heal and revive him, and the experiments went wrong. Horribly wrong. From her designs, music, and boss fight, Mother Brain is actually easy to beat once you get past how horrifically ugly she is. Zero. Zero was a weird one. He changed from a floating eyeball of dark matter, hell-bent on destroying the dream world, then an angel eye of death and crystal shards, and I don't think we see him again after crystal shards. And for good reason. Zero, much like Gygus, is the embodiment of dark matter, and evil, and hell-bent on revenge and destruction, and not seeing said villain again for a long time, to the point of questioning if they existed in the first place. Yeah, that's kind of the villain Zero is. Hades. While I haven't played much of Kid Icarus at all, it's an interesting game with various takes of Greek gods and mythical characters, like Medusa for example. Speaking of which, after you defeat Medusa, as the end credits roll, Hades literally trolls you into his own boss battle. Also, side note, his one-liners and jokes are super funny.
Before you do, you should know that I whipped up that Medusa especially for you.
Wait, how?
Add a pinch of memories to a ton of souls. Put them in a blender and hit frappe.
Comedical Hades worked for Disney, and it works for Nintendo. Also, he makes me think of a fusion between Hades and Jafar, and I feel the same VA for Jafar is a VA for this Hades. Yeah, I don't know why, correct me if I'm wrong, which I feel like I am, so moving on.
It's hard to believe, but you actually got me, Pit. The nerve of you.
Ridley. One of the best ways I can describe Ridley is he's the Nintendo version of Frieza. If we're counting the manga, he tricks a young Samus into sympathy, and she tries to befriend him, only for him to turn a complete 180 and threaten to kill her, and then scarring her for life by killing her parents, and supposedly eating her father or mother, and heals himself because he can heal by consuming human flesh. Yeah, that's actually pretty disgusting. Are we sure this weirdo is in part Wendigo? And in every game, he returns, and sadly, Samus can't get any closure at all. This guy is a sick, twisted, sadistic bastard. Plus, his boss fights are quite entertaining, and his boss music is freaking amazing. As a metalhead myself, I actually like it. Before we get to number one, I'm gonna give a quick honorable mention to Ganondorf. He almost made it on the list, but believe it or not, there were baddies even worse than he was. But I still wanted him to be on this list for a lot of reasons. Kidnapping Zelda in order to rule over Hyrule like the tyrant we know he is, has a beast form that's freaky AF, wanting the Triforce of Power for obvious reasons. He kind of makes you think of Jafar, Scar, and Frollo fused together to become Ganon. Again, Sally didn't make it onto this list, but he still gets an honorable mention just for being one of the best Nintendo villains of all time. Taboo. Definitely one of the hardest villains and bosses in the Smashverse. Taboo is the most evil, challenging, and by far, possibly most OP powerful villain of all time. He could take out every last villain on this list if he wanted to. And not only defeating Master Hand, but also almost destroy the subspace mercenary in the game. The dude was so godlike and so OP that it's hard to forget about him. Heck, he was so OP that every last villain and hero from each Nintendo game teamed up to defeat him. Even Sonic and Snake from non-Nintendo games joined the fight to defeat this guy. Again, as said before, he was one of the most difficult bosses to beat, but when you defeat him, it's more than worth it and extremely satisfying. Well, that concludes another list done, and after finishing this list, I feel like Nintendo's the Disney of video games. Anyways, comment your favorite Nintendo villain in the comments below, or if you have a villain in mind that you didn't see on this list, be sure to share in the comments as well, and I'll see you in the next one, pups. Cue the outro, RP is out, peace!